Good morning, students. Today's our discussion topic is side of the neck. So, side of the neck contain the skin, superficial fascia, deep fascia, and triangles of the neck, and one important muscles which divide the side of the neck into anterior triangle and posterior triangle, that is sternocleidomastoid muscle. So, in the first half of this session, we discuss only the skin, superficial fascia, and deep fascia. So, knowledge of skin, superficial fascia, and deep fascia of the neck is extremely important because the cleavage line in the skin which help to plan the direction of surgical incisions. Also, the deep fascia forms the facial compartments and spaces in the neck. So, it also forms the facial planes along which infection can travel from one place to another. That's why the to study the detailed structure of this skin, superficial fascia, deep fascia is important before studying the deeper aspect. Now, first of all, the skin of the side of the neck. In this region, it is a thin skin is the thin one, and it is normally under tension. So, direction of tension lines often corresponding with the wrinkle lines, also called as the Langer lines or cleavage line, and they are disposed transversely around the neck. Therefore, surgical incision made along this line, that is transverse incision in the neck, which that is healed with the minimal invisible scars. Now, cutaneous innervation of the side of the neck. So that is derived from the C2, C3, and C4 cervical spinal segments. First cervical segment has no cutaneous distribution, while C5, C6, C7, C8, and T1 that from the brachial plexus and that do not supply the neck region. So four cutaneous nerves supply the skin of the side of the neck, and they are nothing but the branches of anterior primary rami of C2, C3, C4. So these are the four nerves supply this region, and this now supply the posterior aspect of the skin of the neck, and ultimately these are the branches of the cervical plexus. So this diagram showing the four cutaneous nerves. These are the lesser occipital C2, then great auricular C2, C3. Then third one is the anterior or transverse cutaneous nerve C2, C3, and supraclavicular nerve C3, C4. That can be seen here also. Great auricular, lesser occipital, transverse cutaneous, and supraclavicular nerves, medial, intermediate, and lateral. So that innervate the skin of the side of the neck. So this diagram showing the one important muscle of this region, that is the sternocleidomastoid muscle. That divide the region of the neck into two compartments, anterior triangle and posterior triangle. So in the side of the neck, today we discuss about the posterior triangle and these important muscles. Now, superficial fascia of the side of the neck. It is a thin layer of loose areolar tissue, and it containing the thin sheet of this important muscle, that is platysma, also called as a subcutaneous muscle. In addition to the platysma, superficial fascia also containing the cutaneous nerves, superficial veins, superficial lymph nodes, and lymph vessels. Out of them, cutaneous nerves and veins lies deep to the platysma muscle. They lies deep to this subcutaneous platysma muscle. And now, apart from that, amount of subcutaneous fat is more in case of children and women than in case of men. Now we discuss the platysma muscle, origin, insertion, action, and nerve supply. So it arises from lower aspect and insertion on the above. So platysma muscle, it arises from the skin as well as deep fascia, which cover the upper part of the pectoralis major muscle, that is the pectoral muscle of the pectoral region of the upper lip, and also the anterior part of the deltoid muscle, from where these fibers are arise, and this fiber passing upward and forward, crossing the clavicle as well as sternocleidomastoid muscles, and most of the fiber are inserted into the lower border of the body of mandible. So it is a thin quadrilateral muscular sheet in the superficial fascia of the side of the neck that can be easily seen after removal of the skin. Now, morphologically, this platysma muscle is represent the remnant of the panniculus carnosus of animals, and according to development, it is derived from the second branchial arch. So that is supplied by the cervical branch of the seventh cranial nerve, that is the facial nerve, because it is a nerve of the second pharyngeal arch. Now it also covers the anterior triangle as well as posterior triangle, particularly the anterior inferior part of the posterior triangle as well as superior part of the anterior triangle of the neck. They are covered by this platysma muscle. Now fiber passes upwards and forward, superficial to the clavicle as well as sternocleidomastoid muscle. It crosses the lower part of the posterior triangle as well as superior part of the anterior triangle, and finally it is inserted into the lower border of the mandible, body of mandible. While some anterior fiber decussate with the corresponding fiber of the opposite side and across the midline for about 2.5 centimeter below and behind the symphysis menti. About 2.5 centimeter below and behind the symphysis menti. Now most of the fibers are inserted into the lower border of the body of mandible. Some posterior fibers pass superficial to the angle of mandible and also the masseter muscle, and then they turn medially and insert into the skin of the angle of mandible through the rhizorius muscle. Now action of the platysma muscle. So here it can be seen as a anterior fiber are decussating uh, just below the symphysis menti. Here, both side, this platysma muscle, subcutaneous seat muscle. Now action of the platysma muscle. When it acting from above, it produces a vertical ridges in the skin of the neck, which release the pressure of the skin over the underlying veins, and so it help in the venous return. Therefore, it also serves to as the pressure of the tight collar. Now acting from below, it helps to depress the mandible and draws the angle of the mouth downwards and laterally, as in expression of the terror or horror. So this is about the action of the platysma muscle. Now we discuss the cutaneous nerves of the neck in short. Skin on the back of the neck, they are supplied by the posterior primary rami of the cervical segment C2, C3, C4, while skin on the front and side of the neck, they are supplied by the cutaneous nerves derived from the ventral rami of the C2, C3, C4 cervical spinal nerves through the branches of the cervical plexus. Name are the lesser occipital, greater auricular, transverse cervical or anterocutaneous nerve of the neck, and supraclavicular nerves. Now we discuss the superficial veins of the neck. There are two veins. One is the external jugular vein, which passes over the sternocleidomastoid muscle and drain into the subclavian vein. And another one vein which is that we will discuss in the anterior triangle of neck, that is the anterior jugular vein. That is present on each side of the anterior midline region of the neck. Now external jugular vein, how it starts? So it starts near the apex of the parotid gland, just below the angle of mandible, by the union of the posterior division of the retromandibular vein and the posterior auricular vein. This one is the posterior auricular vein, and this one is the posterior division of the retromandibular vein, and that form the external jugular vein finally. Right? So this one is the external jugular vein. Now how it runs? It runs almost vertically downward across the sternocleidomastoid muscle under cover of the platysma muscle to pierce the deep cervical fascia in the antero-inferior angle of the posterior triangle of the sternocleidomastoid muscle and enters the supraclavicular space. Here it enters the supraclavicular space. So this area lies just above the clavicle. After passing through the space, it terminates in the subclavian vein. So external jugular vein having a course and size is different, means it is variable in nature. It also becomes visible in case of old age. So it provides venous return to the right side of the heart and distance the vein. That's why in case of old age, pressure of the external jugular vein can be visible externally. Now there are two pairs of the valves in the lumen of the external jugular vein, one at the termination into the subclavian vein another about 4 centimeter above the clavicle, because these valves do not prevent the regurgitation of the colon. Now, superficial lymph nodes and lymph vessels, they are situated around the junction of the head and neck. They drain all the superficial structure and some deep structure of the head region. So most of the efferent lymphatic vessels from the lymph nodes pass to the deep cervical group of lymph nodes and arrange along the internal jugular vein. Now few scattered lymph nodes, superficial lymph nodes are found along the external jugular vein as well as anterior jugular vein, and they also drain into the deep cervical lymph nodes. Now superficial cervical lymph nodes situated around the junction of the head and neck, they form the cervical collar. So these are the submental lymph nodes, submandibular, then pre-auricular means in front of the auricle, that is also called as a parotid group of lymph node. Then post-auricular, retroauricular or mastoid lymph node, then occipital lymph node. So this group of lymph node form the cervical collar. So that can be seen in this diagram also. Occipital, then post-auricular, pre-auricular, submandibular and submental. So this is about the superficial fascia. Now deep fascia of the neck. Here the deep fascia of the neck is clinically very important because it forms the various fascial spaces in the neck. It also provides capsule to the glands and invests the muscle in this region. Apart from that, it also forms the protective sheath around the neurovascular structures. And the layer of the deep cervical fascia form the fascial planes to direct the spread of infection or pus in the neck region. So deep cervical fascia mainly consists of three layers from inside to outside, that is investing layer of deep cervical fascia, pretracheal fascia, prevertebral fascia. Then also it containing the modification of the fascia are the carotid sheath, buccopharyngeal fascia and pharyngobasilar fascia. Now first of all we discuss about the investing layer of deep cervical fascia. Now basically the structure of the neck, spaces between these layers, they are filled with the loose areolar tissue. So investing layer of deep cervical fascia surrounds the neck like a collar, and it forms the roof of the posterior triangle. From the posterior aspect, when we discuss about the attachment of the investing layer, it attaches superiorly to the external occipital protuberance that is present on the occipital region, then superior nuchal line, then mastoid process and lower border of the mandible from behind to forward. An inferior attachment of the investing layer, inferior layer of the investing layer, that is spine of scapula, then acromion process, upper aspect of the clavicle as well as jugular notch of the manubrium sterni from behind to forward. And anteriorly it across the midline. It becomes the continuous with the counterpart of the other side. So in the anterior midline it is attached to the symphysis menti here. It is attached to the symphysis menti. Then hyoid bone and up to the jugular notch. So this is the anterior attachment of the investing layer. Now posteriorly it is attached to the ligamentum nuchae and spine of the C7 cervical vertebra. So these are the attachment of the investing layer. Now tracing of the investing layer, vertical as well as horizontal, and trace upwards above the hyoid bone here. It splits to enclose the submandibular gland, and superficial layer covering the superficial surface of the gland, and it is attached to the lower border of the body of mandible. Lower border of the body of mandible. Then deep layer covers the medial surface of the gland, and it is attached to the mylohyoid line of the mandible. And posterior to the submandibular gland, at the lower pole of the parotid gland, it again splits and encloses the parotid gland here. And it encloses the parotid gland. Now superficial layer over the parotid gland, it is stronger one, and it covers the superficial surface of the parotid gland as a parotidomastoid mesenteric fascia. So this one is a superficial layer of the investing layer to get attached to the border of the lower border of the zygomatic arch. Now this one is the deep layer. It passes deep to the parotid gland and it is attached to the lower border of the tympanic plate, and also it is attached at the styloid process of the temporal bone. Now part of the layer stretch between the styloid process and angle of the mandible, that from the stylomandibular ligament. That portion become thickened one, and that separates the parotid gland from the submandibular gland. Now when we trace downwards, the fascia splits twice and to enclose the two spaces. Here it becomes split and enclose the submandibular gland. Here it enclose the parotid gland. So investing layer split and enclose the two salivary gland, that is the parotid gland and submandibular gland. Now when we trace downwards, the fascia splits and to enclose the two spaces. Above the suprasternal notch, it splits and into two layers and enclose the, this is called as a suprasternal space of Bunn, before being attached to the anterior and posterior border of the suprasternal notch. Now, what are the content present in the suprasternal notch? That is the sternal head of the sternocleidomastoid muscle on both sides, as well as interclavicular ligament and jugular venous arch. Now, above the middle third of the clavicle, it again splits into two layers and encloses the supraclavicular space. And it is a smaller one. And anterior and posterior layer, both layers are attached to the anterior aspect as well as posterior aspect of the upper surface of the clavicle. So this green line, that is the anterior and posterior layer of the investing layer, and that encloses the supraclavicular space. Now posterior layer is also enclose the inferior belly of omohyoid. Then it attach on the posterior aspect of the clavicle, and that continues with the posterior layer of the clavipectoral fascia. Now what are the content present in the supraclavicular space? So that is the terminal part of the external jugular vein that drain into the subclavian vein, and supraclavicular nerves before it continues as a cutaneous branch. So these are the two content of the supraclavicular space. Now tracing, investing layer here it also make a pulley to form the fascial pulleys to anchor the tendon of the digastric muscle as well as omohyoid muscle, that you will learn in the anterior triangle of the neck. Now horizontal tracing of the investing layer. When we trace forwards from the attachment to the ligamentum nuchae, when we trace forwards from the attachment to the, this one is the ligamentum nuchae, right? When we trace forwards, so it first splits and enclose the trapezius muscle and form the roof of the posterior triangle. Then it again split and enclose the sternocleidomastoid muscle and it form the roof of the anterior triangle. So these are the vertical and horizontal tracing of the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. Now we discuss about the pretracheal fascia. It is a layer of deep cervical fascia cover the front and side of the trachea. So this one is a pretracheal fascia, front and side of the trachea. It splits to enclose the thyroid gland and forming the capsule of the thyroid gland, and it is attached to the thyroid cartilage, oblique line of the thyroid cartilage, and also to the arch of the cricoid cartilage anteriorly. Now fibrous band, so this is a pretracheal fascia, enclose the and suspend the thyroid gland and form its false capsule. True capsule, it is actually the condensation of the gland itself, and this false capsule it is formed by the pretracheal fascia. Now, a fibrous band called as a ligament of Berry, also called a suspensory ligament for the thyroid gland, that is derived from the pretracheal fascia, and that connect the capsule of the lateral lobe of the thyroid gland to the cricoid cartilage. Now, tracing of the pretracheal fascia, horizontal tracing. First of all, when traced horizontal, it merge with the investing layer of deep cervical fascia. It merge with the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. This one is the, in front of the trachea there is a pretracheal layer. So when we tracing from the posterolateral aspect, merge with the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia, and also the enclose the sternocleidomastoid muscle and anterior wall of the carotid sheath. This one is the carotid sheath. This one is the anterior wall of the carotid sheath. Now vertical tracing of the pretracheal fascia. When trace above, it is attached to the, here it is hyoid bone. So it is attached to the hyoid bone. When we trace below, it enters the thorax in front of the trachea and blend with the apex of the fibrous pericardium. This one is the fibrous pericardium. So this layer is extended into the thorax. Now prevertebral fascia. It is extremely strong and lies in front of the prevertebral muscles. Now tracing of the prevertebral fascia. It also forms the floor of the posterior triangle of the neck. Now attachment superiorly, inferiorly, anteriorly and laterally. So when we trace lateral, it covers the scaleni muscle, levator scapulae and splenius capitis, forming the facial carpet of the posterior triangle. Also we can say muscles of the floor of the posterior triangle are covered by the prevertebral fascia. And roof of the cervical spinal nerves that from the cervical and brachial plexus lies deep to the prevertebral fascia. As the trunk of the brachial plexus and subclavian artery emerge between the scalenus anterior and medius muscle, they move towards the axilla and they carry with them a tubular sheath of this fascia that is called as a axillary sheath. So this is axillary sheath and which may extend up to the elbow. So it containing the upper trunk of the brachial plexus as well as subclavian artery. So that provides a fixed base for the movement of the pharynx, esophagus, carotid sheath for the movement of the neck and during also swallowing. Now vertical tracing of the prevertebral fascia. This one is a prevertebral fascia, this blue color line. This is the prevertebral fascia. This is the retropharyngeal space, right? So these are the, this is the longus colli muscle. This is the section of the vertebral body, intervertebral disc. So trace above the fascia extend up to the base of the skull, to the base of the skull, to which it is attached. Now trace below, it is continuous downward in front of the longus colli muscle and into the superior mediastinum where it blends with the anterior longitudinal ligament of the upper three thoracic vertebrae. Now other extra feature of the investing layer, prevertebral fascia is anteriorly this prevertebral layer of deep cervical fascia is separated from the posterior aspect of the pharynx by a potential space that is called as a retropharyngeal space. So between buccopharyngeal fascia and prevertebral fascia there is a retropharyngeal space is there, and this space allows the expansion of the pharynx during swallowing, and this retropharyngeal space is continuous with the parapharyngeal space in the side of the pharynx. Now retropharyngeal space is divided into two lateral compartments that is called the spaces of Gillette by a midline fibrous raphe. Now each lateral space also contains the retropharyngeal lymph nodes which are usually disappear after the 3 to 4 years of age. Now space behind the prevertebral fascia and in front of the vertebral body that is called the prevertebral space. Now other derivatives of the deep cervical fascia. This includes the carotid sheath, buccopharyngeal fascia and pharyngobasilar fascia. First of all, the carotid sheath. It is a condensation of the fibroareolar tissue around the main vessels of the neck. And which are the main vessels? These are the common carotid artery and internal carotid artery. And vein is the internal jugular vein. And in between this artery and vein on the posterior aspect, there is a 10th cranial nerve is situated, that is vagus nerve. Now carotid sheath is a wedge shape between the three layers of the deep cervical fascia. Between the three layers of the deep cervical fascia. This one is a pretracheal layer, prevertebral layer, and this is the investing layer. So between these three layers of the deep cervical fascia, carotid sheath is a wedge and attached to the all the three layers by the loose areolar tissue. Now carotid sheath is thick around the common carotid artery and internal carotid artery, while it is thin over the vein in order to allow its expansion during the increased venous return. Now carotid sheath extends from the base of skull to the above to the arch of aorta below. extend from base of skull to the arch of aorta below. Now, at the base of the skull, it is attached to the margin of the carotid canal and also the jugular fossa. And at the arch of aorta, it is blend with the outer layer of the artery, that is tunica adventitia. Now, relation of the carotid sheath means which structure lies within the anterior wall of the carotid sheath. So, there is a presence of ansa cervicalis. So, ansa cervicalis is present within the anterior wall of the carotid sheath. And cervical sympathetic chain, that is closely related to the posterior wall of the carotid sheath, but that lies in front of the, or that is plastered to the prevertebral fascia. So this is the carotid sheath that encloses the common carotid artery and also the internal carotid artery, internal jugular vein, and in between these two there is on the posterior aspect vagus nerve space. These are the content of the carotid sheath, and carotid sheath is the modification of deep fascia here. Okay. So here it can be seen as a carotid sheath, so that encloses this neurovascular bundle, and that is wedged between the three layers of the deep cervical fascia, that is the prevertebral fascia, pretracheal fascia, and investibular. Okay. Now buccopharyngeal fascia. It covers the superior constrictor muscle of the pharynx externally and extend up to the superficial aspect of the buccinator muscle. Buccopharyngeal fascia extend from the base of skull up to the esophagus. And then pharyngobasilar fascia. So it is a similar layer of fascia on the internal surface of the constrictor muscles, that is called the pharyngobasilar fascia, and it is thickened between upper border of the superior constrictor muscle and the base of the skull. So these are the five modifications of the deep fascia. Now the clinical aspect of this deep cervical fascia. First of all, it encloses the parotid gland. So anterior layer of the parotid gland that can be supplied by the nerves. So it can be in case of any parotid swellings, there are pain occurs from the parotid region. Another one is the external carotid artery should be secure before excising of the submandibular gland, because external carotid branches of the external carotid artery passes nearby the submandibular gland. Then pretracheal layer enclose the thyroid gland, and also the thyroid swellings moves with the larynx during swallowing or deglutition. That is also helpful due to the this pretracheal fascia. Now it produces the different species of the neck. So neck infection behind the prevertebral fascia due to any tuberculosis of the cervical vertebra or cervical caries that can be transmitted from neck to thorax region, right? Because prevertebral fascia is extend up to the thorax. Then neck infection in front of the prevertebral fascia in case of retropharyngeal space. So there are also chances of infection, spread of infection, also collection of pus in the retropharyngeal lymph nodes. Lymph node become enlarged. That condition is called acute retropharyngeal abscess. So it also spread the infection or pus in from neck to thorax region. Then any neck infection in front of the pretracheal fascia, that also extend, because pretracheal fascia is extend up to the fibrous pericardium. So that also extend along with this facial plane into the neck region. Then external jugular vein, if it can be cut, and because it is directly attached to the deep fascia, margin of the vein are directly attached with the deep fascia. So after has been cut of the external jugular vein, it prevents the retraction of the vein. So it causes the air entry inside the lumen of the veins. So that causes the air embolism, and there is a consequent death occurs. So this is the clinical anatomy of the deep cervical fascia or cervical fascia. So I hope you learn about the superficial structure of the deep cervical fascia, skin, superficial fascia of the side of the neck. Now next portion, that is posterior triangle and substernocleidomastoid muscle, we learn in the next topic.